Yeah, in 1994, I was a senior in college and I was on my way to run the Austin 10K, which is a big race. And it had symbolic meaning to me, this race, because my life had kind of fallen apart in college. I had gotten involved in, just drinking too much, partying too much. And it came to my awareness that I needed to get my life together, and running was that way that I decided to get back on track and really focus my life of kind of running into the future, a brighter future. So it was really kind of a shock in some ways to have this head-on collision on my way to run this race, which was supposed to, quote, change my life, for the better in a way. And there I was in this broken vehicle, in this broken body, and I was so physically harmed that I couldn't reach my glove box. So I knew something was wrong with my spine. I knew that I literally didn't have, the strength of my core to move myself up to get, my driver's license from the glove box. And in that moment, I just realized this is out of my hands. This whole situation, this is the first time where I have no control, because I'd been kind of a driven person, like get into a good college, get good grades, get over the past. Even though I battled some demons, like some emotional demons and not knowing how to heal, I was still like an overdrive, just that type of person. So when I realized that control was taken from me, I was agnostic. Like, what am I going to call on in this moment? First, my brain, am I going to make it out? Am I going to walk? Am I going to advocate for myself once I get to the hospital? What's going to happen? But there was this part of me that gave this foxhole prayer of, hey, if there is a God out there, I need help in this moment. This is pretty serious. And so it was serious. There was a 17-hour wait at the ER. And that was because my spine was broken in 3 places. Vertebrae were pressing on the spine. I was losing feeling in my leg, and they needed an expert surgeon to work on this. And there wasn't one available immediately. I overheard a nurse say that he wasn't coming in because I didn't have health insurance. And here was this working class kid doing my best to like make it to that next level. And I was like, oh, I could die here on this board and no one's going to help me. And I was trying so hard in this system, and it hit me. And I was so angry in that moment. I can't even tell you the amount of anger that I felt. And when I finally met a surgeon who was going to work on me, I think the relief was just overwhelming. And so at least, that next step was happening and I could just figure out life from that point. But there was a lot of fear about walking, there was a lot of fear about what life would be like after this moment. That was just purely physical, not anything spiritual that came to me until I went under. And so when they finally wheeled me into surgery, I must have been in surgery for quite some time. But the first thing that I noticed was I popped out of my physical form and felt no worry, no pain. I didn't think this was odd. Immediately, I was certain that the real me was that spirit form. Like, I knew that from the moment I left my body, and that the body was really just this vehicle that I had been in. And I was like, how could I possibly have thought, that the body was everything, that the mind was everything? Like, it really just struck me. But I was also in that mystery, or in that awe of, wow, this is a new way of being. I'm outside of my form, and I looked down at the surgeons operating on me. And then I saw these large beings, and I've struggled, I called them angels, but at the time, I had no idea. They were aliens, just these light beings. All I knew was that they were incredibly intelligent, and that they had this sense of energy that immediately calmed down anything that I might have felt in that separation from my body. I was given waves of peace. I was given waves of healing. I was given these waves of light that allowed me to adjust in that moment and to go, okay, this is what's happening. Thank you for the help. They sent that help through the back of my surgeons and into my spine, and I saw that this light could communicate. I couldn't believe it at the time, but I certainly believed, like, oh, these angelic beings, these beings of higher intelligence are assisting with goodwill, with light. And maybe the surgeons know, maybe they don't, but I see that the body's going to be fine. And In that moment, the monitor flatlined. I realized technically the body was technically dead. And so I was in the corridor and I saw my stepdad get a candy bar, which I thought was funny because he was one of those health nuts that always bragged and pointed out, like, you're drinking a Coke, that's bad for you. You're eating that sugar, it's not good for your body. And I was like, haha, he's eating a candy bar. How funny. But I had this goodwill towards him and everyone at that point. By the time I'd left my body, there was nothing left to harm. We're just love at our core. At least that's what I was beginning to feel. And then I went out into the night sky and really just felt this love for everyone I'd ever met or interacted with, even these small instances. And there was just this sense of, hey, this whole journey we take too seriously. We're in our physical form, and outside of body, it's really not that serious. It's just love. And so I began to feel that at deeper levels and kind of transition into what I call a night sky that became more like the cosmos. And as I got into that space, I felt an intelligence, greater than those angels, perhaps God, perhaps creator, divinity's intelligence, beginning to come towards me and say very simple things like, love is all that we take with us, be like a little child, remind them to go to nature. There were just these simple truths that I thought, maybe I need a little more than this. It was like, this seems a little too simple at the time, but I was like, but these are truths and I understand this to be true. And then the energy was communicated on a different level. Like, it will all make sense later, just accept it, accept this change. And then I transitioned into a realm where I saw my grandfather. First, I didn't recognize him because he had this youthfulness. I had seen him die when I was 10, and I saw him die. I was the last person who he made a contact with, and I felt this deep emotional connection to him. But at 10, I was already kind of distrusting religion, distrusting adults, and kind of looking for science as my answer to things, if that makes sense, like what happens to the body. And so I remember touching my grandfather and thinking, okay, but that's not him. The only thing that was him was this desire to connect with me, to love me. But in that place, I was like, oh, he never died. He became his true, beautiful self. And I connected with that death. And so in that state, I just relaxed even more because I was like, it would be fine if I had to stay there with him. I knew, that would be enough. It would be fun. It would be beautiful. And so a lot of people question this part of my near-death experience, but to me, it makes perfect sense because one of his messages was all that dies can be made new in this heavenly realm. And so he had given, when he died, this old, beautiful Ford Chevy truck, an antique. And I always loved that truck and loved those memories. And so he's like, well, let's drive through this realm in that truck. And I decided I wanted to be a child since that's when I knew him. And I also decided that in that moment with him, I would just be happy and just at peace. But I was shocked at the next thing that happened because he started driving and I was looking at how green the grass was. Nothing was dead. Everything was alive with beauty and life. And in this place, I just knew nothing could die. And he looked at me, he was like driving the truck and I was sitting in the back and my feet were going through the grass, and he looked back and he said, do you want to continue onward? And I knew that didn't mean keep driving with him. I knew that meant go to God. And without a second thought, I was like, yes, love you, Grandpa, but if God is there, I need to see what this is all about. And on that flight, for lack of a better term, it was more like I was a magnet going towards source. Everything that had ever plagued me in life seemed to be falling away. So, at 21, of course, I'd been an insecure, bullied, teenager. Of course, I had all these worries and wounds that so many people do. I mean, like, I couldn't even put a number on it, but there's lots of dysfunctional families, with varying levels of dysfunction. And every child might feel like their needs or desires on some level aren't seen or understood. But in this light, I felt seen and understood and loved exactly the way I was. And, instead of feeling special, I realized, oh, everybody is loved like this. Like, it's not just me. And I didn't realize how not okay I had felt, for so many years, and how probably so many people suffer with just not feeling that complete engulfment of unconditional love. And so as I felt people's prayers trying to pull me back to my earthly life, I just saw them as incomplete in comparison to that love. And so as I started feeling more and more of that and wanting to go closer and closer to that love, I was stopped at some point and I was told, you're going to return to your body. So this is what's going to happen, and you're going to teach and you're going to spread light. And so when I heard that deep within my soul, I knew I was going back, and I actually argued a little bit with this idea, even though I saw a vision of what it looked like. There were all these souls along this river, and some of them had shadows, which I knew was fear, and some of them were in the light. And it was as if God was saying, you're going to remind the ones that are in fear that they can open to this love, that they can open to this light, and that it can really just make their existence here so much better. So after I left the hospital, after many days in the hospital, I stayed at my mom and stepdad's house. And as I was beginning to recover, my mom, was fixing healthy meals for me. I was in a lot of pain. I was having out-of-body experiences, but as things normalized and I talked more with her, I said, hey, Mom, did my stepdad get a candy bar when I was in the ER? And how long did you guys wait? How long was my surgery? And she said, yeah, in fact, your dad and I, my father, they were divorced. They were both on their knees praying because they felt like I had died. And she said that my stepdad walked in with a candy bar, made a joke, and said, wow, the mood in here is really serious. Anyone want some of the Snickers bar? And so he split his Snickers bar. They got off their knees and, they continued to wait for me to come out of surgery. And I was like, Mom, that was the moment I was dead. And, that was, you felt it as a parent. You felt that break. We all have psychic abilities, we all have a connection, or if you don't want to call it psychic abilities, we all are deeply tied to people that we love. And I was like, you felt the moment I died. But, many years later, after teaching and really just kind of following that calling and trying to bring the light into students' lives, I started telling the story more publicly. And a researcher in my area, Dr. Jan Holden, who is really kind of well known for her study of these experiences, loved that verifiable moment. I never really thought that I'd tell the story that other than to my students or people who were interested. I didn't think it would be this public part, but as many years, decades, now have gone by, it is a part of the mission, because it is a form of teaching to simply talk about how to use unconditional love as a way to make your life better, as a way to heal wounds, as a way to be better in community, safer in this world. And, it continues to have a message. Staring lost up at the sky.